Hey there guys, and welcome back. So, we are starting out on the desktop today for our favorite semi-serial segment of project updates. So, this is the spool that we had on the Decoiler, and as you can see, I've made some changes. So, previously we had, and I've already thrown it out, but we had an expanding, what do you call it? I'm blanking on what I was calling it before, but we had an expanding mechanism on the inside of the spool to center it and to rotate it. And we have a couple different machines like that at work, which I was basing it off of. I based it more off of one of the machines than the other one. They function slightly differently. But the biggest problem with it was that, and I did not occur to me at the time when we were designing it, was that at work, the expanding arms on the inside of the reel, coil, whatever's on there, those are keyed to the shaft, so they spin with the shaft. I had referenced in previous videos that this may start slipping if there's too much pressure, and sure enough, it did. It did start slipping, and one of those things, without that being keyed, a couple things, right? One, it's plastic on plastic, so it's going to be a little slippier than, for example, metal on metal. At least the metal that we have at any rate. So that's one potential problem. The other potential problem, the other problem, I should say, is that it not being keyed to the shaft. So I had two options. Either I could attempt to key the shaft and then change the mechanism, and that's certainly something we could do, or I could go a different route, and I decided to go a different route, as you can see here. So right now we've got these little fins on here that I designed for the filament spools, and they basically, if you look on the inside here, they go right into the slots and they push against the edges. So that's how I'm solving it right now. It was the quickest way to solve the problem. I just had to get myself some M8 nuts because I did not have standard M8 nuts. I only had lock nuts. So now we got these nuts holding it in place, and the only thing I screwed up, well, actually there's two things I screwed up on. One, if you look on this side, you'll see that this is solid here. On the other side, I had forgotten to do that, so I had to actually take my my X-Acto blade and trim that off, trim that little fin off. So that was first mistake. Second mistake is that I was only thinking about this going in one direction, which is why I've got this curve here, just going up against this one face. So that is obviously not, I realized how this is always going to work. Sometimes we're going to decoil, sometimes we're going to coil, which means that this needs to be ambidextrous. So if I ever need to reprint these pieces, I'll reprint them just as a flat part where the fin connects at the same height on both sides. So that is one change that would happen in the future, assuming I have to replace these. For the time being, they work well enough as far as I've tried them. And that kind of gets us into problem number 2 with the decoiler at the moment, which is that I say as far as I tried them because, again, the loops came in, the G2 loops, because as I mentioned in the previous stream, the talking stream, I had to buy some of these because my methods of joining the straight ribbon into loops was not working very well. So I just got pre-made loops, and now I don't have to worry about it. So these came in, and the next thing I found out is that this motor that I had bought, it's one of those things, it's a geared 12-volt motor, and I was like, you know what, should be good enough, 12-volt geared motor should have plenty of torque. It does not have plenty of torque. Now, fortunately, this is a 200 RPM model, which I looked at the 200 RPMs and kind of along the veins of, well, 12-volt geared motor should be fine. It being 200 RPMs, that's significantly lower than what a DC motor normally would run at. So I was like, you know what, that's probably geared up enough. That's another reason why I assumed it was geared up enough. But like I said, not actually geared up enough. So I'm going to have to return this motor. Fortunately, they have another motor, I believe, in the same exact size factor, so the mount that I printed for this guy, I'll be able to reuse, but I'll be returning this guy for the 5 RPM motor. And the 5 RPM motor I actually checked, and it says it's rated for 15 kilograms, which would be over 30 pounds of force, of torque, I should say. And I'm thinking that will be good enough. Right now, the motor's actually stalling out when I try to coil. So I just took my wire right, grabbed my wire. Whoops, sorry about that. Threaded it into the coiler and tried just running it without the Arduino attached. Just hooked up my 12 volts to it, see what it would pull. And it got a little far, but once it got, let's say, a quarter of the way, somewhere between quarter and a halfway around the first loop, and then it started stalling out. So since it was stalling out, obviously not much I can do like that with that, especially because I was running it at the 12 volts, which is the max voltage on the motor. So again, just going to have to go to a bigger motor. So this is on hold until we get the bigger motor in. Meanwhile, in other news, you'll recall that the belts got delayed. They got delayed for like 2 weeks, and I was like, you know what? I really should just reorder these. I don't know why I haven't reordered these, you know, after missing 3 days. And won't you know, yesterday, the belts that I had ordered showed up. So these are also getting returned because obviously I bought replacement ones since these hadn't shown up. So there's an update on that. So that is the update on the Decoiler out of the way. Next up, the Dremel press. So I had said that the Dremel press would be, I'd do the demo for it on Sunday. The Dremel press, this is all the scrap pieces I had from the Dremel press. I had literally printed less than one piece on the Dremel press before I realized it needed an adjustment in the design. I stopped the print at this point, which as you can see, it's like an inch tall at this point. So one of those things, it was maybe going for like an hour by the time I realized that I needed to adjust the design. And the design update worked flawlessly on the first go, which is why I was like, oh yeah, totally, I'm going to make an attachment, an add-on to the Dremel press, and we'll display this tomorrow. We'll display this on Sunday. No problem, easy peasy. Should be able to get done, you know, easily within the time limit. Because, again, it was a small add-on, and it shouldn't take that much time. Well, you may compare this amount of scrap pieces to this. This is the main body right here. So as you can see, I had 6 iterations. Well, yeah, 5 pieces here. So the 6th one was the correct iteration, the one that finally worked on this piece. And then one of these things, this is another attachment piece that goes with this, works in tandem with this piece. So this was the original design and had to be reprinted. And then I ended up pinning feet for it, so that took a little bit while. And long story short, the Dremel press did not go up on Sunday because it took all of Sunday for me to get through all this printing and actually get the Dremel press attachment done. So that is what happened with the Dremel press. Now, furthermore, onto the Dremel press. The Dremel press is quite large. This brings into question kind of what I was talking about in the last talk stream, which is that I'm thinking I'm going to do more produced videos, and therefore I'm actually thinking which is why I have not done the Dremel press video, because the Dremel press is actually up and running at this point. I could demo it right now if I wanted to, but I think I'm actually going to get away with that. I think I'm only going to stream design stuff for 3D prints and stuff, and then do an official video edited for the product after it's all done, for the design after it's all done. So I believe that's going to be my policy. Again, my biggest problem with that is that editing videos takes me forever. And I forgot. So my webcam has been off for a long time, which is part of the reason why I was delayed on this, delayed starting the stream, because I was fixing the white balance and a couple other things before we got started, because it was all reset and autofocus was back on. I forgot to turn that off. So point being, where we were at is edited videos take me a long time, which is why I haven't been streaming them. And that is really obnoxious because I'd much prefer to be designing stuff than editing videos. Again, see previous statements that I've made 3 times so far saying that I much prefer be streaming than editing, and it is a lot more efficient for me to stream than to edit. But the fact of the matter is that my edited videos actually get significantly more views than my streams. Unfortunately, that's the matter. That's the reality of the matter right now. And part of that may be because the edited videos also end up on, for example, printables or Thingiverse, wherever I decide to put the prints. So that gives them more traffic. However, I suspect that it is also a matter of people are much more willing to watch a video than a stream just because of the current culture in the maker. As I talked about on Saturday when I did my big talk stream, you know, let's face it, 99.99% of makers do not stream. They only do edited videos. So that's likely, at the moment, the preferred method for most people, most viewers. And, you know, it's just going to be what it is for the time being. Maybe that changes in the future. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just the best way to do it. I don't know. But that is where we're at. The drone press will not be coming out on stream. It will be an edited video, along with my other projects. For example, the Decoiler. Once I get the Decoiler finally up and running, that will be an edited video instead of an actual on-stream demonstration. So, yep, that is policy for the channel moving forward. Let us go ahead and now switch into, yeah, you know what? I'm going to start out in, what you call it? Actually, you know what? While I'm here on camera, because I didn't actually pull anything up for this, Light-like. I want to talk about Light-like. So, let me readjust my mic really quick. Hopefully no bad microphone noises here. All right. So, Light-like. With development in general, I have, because of other projects going on, not actually logged the hours in so far this week. I've only got 2.5 hours, or maybe it's 3 hours at this point. And that is due in part because I was working on other projects. However, the more significant problem is I'm actually having a really hard time focusing on it right now for some reason. Now, it may be just because I'm juggling all this other stuff, and as soon as I get all this other stuff off my plate, I'll get back to Light-like. Light-like was one of these projects that I really enjoyed doing because every time I sat down, I got a whole bunch knocked out, and there were even some sessions where I just sat there and coded for like 5 hours straight, right? A little bit of an exaggeration. It was only 3 hours, but I had multiple sessions like that. You know, so I was really positive about Light-like, and all of a sudden, after the break, I've just hit a roadblock. Now, one of those things, as always, it may just be a matter of coming back, getting back in the groove. It may be a matter of, again, that I just have a bunch going on right now, and therefore I can't focus as well. We'll see what happens, but I promise Light-like is not dead. I said this on the talk stream the other day. Light-like will continue. It's just, I don't have a video right now. I would have preferred to put a video out today of Light-like instead of this project update, but that's not the world we live in. So, on that topic, that's the resolution on the topic of the data manager. The data manager was supposed to be a 1, max 2 video series. We are now up to 3, and we probably got like a good bit more. Here's the thing. I've been thinking about this a good bit. Live coding, frankly, I've tried it a few times, and a few times I've said, you know what, maybe we shouldn't be doing live coding. Maybe we should only be doing code review, or otherwise walk through the code bit by bit and build it copy-paste style. That's the other thing I've been thinking, you know, like me have the code already written, confirm that it already works, and then talk my way through how I built the code and copy and paste it into a new Python, JavaScript, whatever file as we go, so it simulates having written the code. That's definitely an option, but I don't think live coding is working. I was optimistic about the data manager because I assumed the data manager was going to be simple enough that I'd be able to bang it out quickly, and that is due in part to the fact that I was calling it a JSON browser at the very beginning, And had it been a JSON browser, had it just been a JSON browser, then we wouldn't be having this conversation because a JSON browser is very, very simple to implement. But that's not actually what I wanted to build to begin with. I was just mislabeling it in my brain. So, one of those things, this was, I think this is just kind of the nail in the coffin for programming live on stream. I think it's just, it does not seem to be feasible to do due to the constant testing and looking up documentation, etc., etc., etc. If there was a project that was simple enough, then maybe I would consider trying it one more time, but for the time being, I'm probably going to cut it out. I'm probably not going to do live coding. Still do code review, still write code and share it with you, but not live coding. And I think that's it for the desktop here now. So I think I will hop on over into Fusione, so we can move on to our next topic. So here we are in Fusion, and this is the design for the enclosure I am building. This enclosure is going to be for my Ender 3 ultimately, but I wanted, in case you missed all this because you didn't watch the talk video the other day, I also wanted it to be airtight, which is one of the requirements, because I have a project coming up. A project that I really want to try out at any rate. It is more of a trial than an actual project, but we'll see what happens with it. If it works out, then that's going to be amazing. But I need something airtight to do it in. And by airtight, I mean reasonably airtight, because as you can see, I got fans on here. Basically, I need to be able to filter out the smell, the exhaust fumes. So, this is what I'm working with right now. I keep on alluding to this enclosure and have never actually shown you anything. So this is where we're at right now. Got a couple of ports on the back for wires to come in. Probably going to put one more hole. I don't know. It could be anywhere really for the filament to go in. And otherwise, we got, like I said, these fan ports. So these fan ports, I still got to design it, but I need to put charcoal filters over here. Probably, I mean, it's one of those things. I should have them on both sides, both the intake and the outtake. I'm halfway between doing an hose hookup and running that first. So, for example, I got one high, one low for airflow purposes. I mean, at least that's how it works in my head. I may just be over-engineering stuff and have no idea what I'm talking about, but probably going to want, I mean, I do want a charcoal filter on both, but I'm thinking of running a hose instead of directly having the fans right here, or possibly running a hose on top of the fans. One of those two. We'll see what happens with it. So the design, all I'm getting at here is not 100% complete. However, as I talked about in the talk episode on Saturday, I wanted to do all this out of acrylic. Okay, I want to do everything out of acrylic because I thought a fully see-through enclosure was cooler looking than anything else. And I said, you know what? I did some pricing out, and acrylic is free and expensive. It was going to cost upwards of $300 to do it, per the way I was pricing it before, and therefore it was a no-go, probably. I'd probably have to abandon it unless I came up with a different material other than acrylic. Well, I suddenly, on Monday, went, oh, you know what? I have looked at a bunch of different materials, but how about HDPE? And that's why it's white right now, because I went, oh, how much does that cost? And as it turns out, it was significantly cheaper than acrylic. And I was like, okay, cool. You know what? This works. We can do HDPE or HPDE rather. Shoot. Hold on. Let me hit this button and switch over to that HDPE. All right, I'm not going crazy. HDPE. For some reason, I was going crazy. I thought I was going crazy. So it was a lot cheaper than than acrylic, and I was like, okay, cool. Now the only problem with this is that you're more or less stuck mechanically binding HDPE, because the only way to actually bind HDPE is to actually remelt it, and there's no way I'm going to be able to melt the whole entire edge, the whole entire 30-inch edge on. Let's hop over back over to Fusion really quick. Fusion. So this long edge, the tall side, I'd have to melt that whole entire thing and melt the side that it's forming to in order to properly bind them. You can't really glue HDPE. So I was going to have to add brackets. I figured I'd grab angle, simple light aluminum angle, and then rivet through was my assumption to bind it all. And then just cover everything in caulk to make sure that we don't have any leakages, which I was planning on doing anyway. I was planning on caulking the inside, even when it was acrylic, just to make sure we did not have any air gaps. And that was cool. I was happy with that. So I started laying out the enclosure to see if, how many basically 48 by 96 sheets I would need, because I figured that'd be cheapest. And I found out that I could almost fit everything. And that was with the exception of this plate right here, which I was going to do acrylic anyway. I was going to keep the door acrylic and then do everything else there. And right here, these strips right here, is how it would fit the front portion here. This front portion, I figured, okay, we're going to be a little short on space, but if I cut this up into slices and then tack it on all together, that'd work. That we'd be able to make that work. And then I realized, wait a second, I'm so close. If I just change the size, so over here in parameters, I had this originally at 26 wide. I was looking at other people's enclosures and they had them like 20-ish wide, 22 wide. So I was like, you know what? I'll make it 26 wide. That won't be a problem. I padded all these sizes. All these sizes are technically padded, just to make sure that I didn't have any problems. So I brought that down to 24, which is still over what most enclosures are. And at this point, then we could also fit this door on here. And if we can get one whole sheet of acrylic and do all the pieces out of one whole sheet, then that's actually not that bad. So now I will go ahead and hop back over to the internets, and I'm just using McMaster-Carr actually has the cheapest prices I've been able to find near me at any rate. So I don't know. So this is cast right here, cast acrylic. I don't know how much big of a difference that makes. I haven't actually looked into that yet, but as you can see, this is 121 right here, and then this is 145. So those are long cries from the 300 plus that I was looking at before. So I'd actually be pretty cool with dropping that much, even the 145, just saying, let's go with this stuff instead of this stuff. But let's see. Let me just do a quick comparison really quick. Quick comparison. So, I mean, the cast A being cheaper and B yeah, I'm just looking at the stats and it's not like the cast may even be better to begin with. So anyway, if we go with this 121 right here, I'd be willing to put that out over the HDPE 76. So I'd be willing to spend the extra $50 to get the whole entire thing in acrylic. The one thing I would cry about is if I am doing this acrylic, cutting this all up, and then I screw up one of the things, right? That would make me cry. So I have to buy a new sheet. Whereas if I screwed up a piece of MDPE, that would be not that big of a deal because of how much cheaper it is. The smaller, getting a replacement piece would be even cheaper, obviously, because I'm not buying the full sheet. So I wouldn't mind buying a small, let's say 25 by 36 piece to replace one of the sides if I accidentally wrecked one of the sides. So that is the one drawback between the HDDP and the acrylic, is that it, if I got to do a replacement, then the price does start adding up. However, A, it looks a whole lot better, and B, the acrylic actually can be glued together. Now, I may decide at the end of the day, after I'm done putting it together, that I still want the angles for support around the edges, but we'll burn that bridge when we get there, right? So if I get this all together as acrylic and I decide, you know what, I'm going to want an angle frame, okay, whatever, it is what it is. The fact that, however, I don't have to mechanically bind it is a bit of a plus. So that is where we are at on the enclosure, and I'm thinking I will go ahead and move forward with that. McMaster car is a bit of a drive for me. I would be driving for work though, because it's a 48 by 96 sheet, so that's not going to fit in my little car, and B, work is a half an hour closer to there than I am, and C, I would be cutting down the sheet into pieces at work. I wouldn't be trying to do that at home because I do not have a table saw at home. So that is where we're at with the enclosure. That's the plan moving forward, is to actually go ahead and get that ordered and then cut up and assembled. And once I have that done, then the mysterious project I keep on alluding to will finally come to come to fruition, is the word I was looking for there. So let's see. That was all the projects that I was thinking about talking about today. Oh no, there was one more. That's right. I just recalled my thumbnail. So my thumbnail, you'll also notice the Fusion sign up on there. I'm going to just toss this out there for right now. I very well may, but I'm not going to commit to it just yet, but I may be switching over to Onshape instead of Fusion. So for as long as I've been getting Fusion surveys, which is I think 2 years now, my constant complaint on the survey is I do not understand why Fusion does not have a consumer level paid subscription. I am very uncomfortable with having a free license right now. I'm not saying that I expect them to shut down my free license. I'm just saying I would much prefer pay for a product than get it for free, because if I'm at least paying for a product, then I have, some right to complain, frankly speaking. And I don't have anything really to complain about Fusion, but I have some right to complain if I need to complain. And I also have some level of security in knowing that I will not lose my license, that I can rely on the license not suddenly disappearing on me one day. So for that reason, I'm thinking about moving over to Onshape. I will probably, sign up and give it a look at the very least. But I just wanted to kind of toss that one out into the aether because I've been thinking about it. It's, the biggest problem is just getting everything over to Onshape. Like, I have a lot of assets in Fusion, but we'll see what happens with it. Just one of those topics I figured I'd toss in there because I have thought about it a lot. And I believe that is it from me then in that case. Relatively short episode. Actually, I guess we hit half an hour. I guess half an hour isn't bad for a project updates. Moving forward, obviously I am on the recording phase for 2 of my projects. The one I haven't told you about, the one I have done that I haven't told you about, and the Dremel press. Those are both on the recording phase and then editing after that. The Coiler Decoiler is waiting for a new motor, and then once that is up and running, I'm hoping that we'll get it up and running. I'm hoping the new motor is geared up high enough at 15 kilograms torque to actually pull this wire. Once that is done, then that is then onto the recording and editing phase. And then with the Lightlike Data Manager, I am, as I kind of alluded to, giving up on coding that live on stream. So you can go ahead and expect that to happen. Expect me to get that done in the background. And once that is done, then I'll just hop back through the code really quick. There's frankly not that much more to do in it. It's just a lot of time. The rest of the code is going to be relatively repetitive, which is another reason why I probably shouldn't be coding it live on stream. But, once we get that done, then I'll just go ahead and do a stream demoing it and showing you guys how it turned out. Again, it's not going to look much different, I don't imagine, than what you've already seen. We've already covered the basics of how everything is going to work. And now it's just a matter of duplicating and finishing off the final touches. So that will get done off stream. Lightlike will continue to be developed and hopefully be done at some point in the near future. With as slowly as I'm going right now, I hope it's sooner than later, but we'll see what happens. And then for projects, once Lightlike is done, obviously we'll move on to setting the controller up for Lightlike. Physically, the physical arcade controller for Lightlike. And that should be straightforward enough because we only have the one specialized input and we've already designed that. And I can have all that printed up, whenever. And then we'll have that available. And I'm thinking, so there are plenty of things I could do for a next project. I'm because I've been winding springs a bit lately, I'm thinking about doing version 3 spring winder. So I have a version 2 and a version 1. Well, I guess you would expect me to have version 1. Version 1 was a manual spring winder. I set myself up a kind of... I don't know how exactly to describe it. Just a manual setup for winding springs. I had set that up, and it's one of those things when you're doing all this manually, it's nice to have, but then you're like, or the computer could do it for me, right? I then designed a second version, which was based off of the first version. It worked under the same principles, which is basically having a dowel, having a central dowel that you wind the spring around, and then simply adding in the stepper motors, adding in the CNC device, which in this case was a, I flashed a Nano with Gerbil. That's how I did that one. And then had another Arduino sending code to it. So that was version 2. And then version 3 is actually what I'll call more of a wire bender. So I have seen springs, and I say springs lately just because they're not generally... it's a wire bender in general, So I'm going to replicate what I've seen from wire benders. I've looked at a bunch of different wire benders, and in theory, a wire bender should be able to do a spring because you're forming the wire. The one major difference between this kind of wire bender and traditional wire bender is that the wire bender that I'm looking to design, I think I'm going to take one of those V-groove bearings that I have and use that to feed, use that on the wire bender. Because generally speaking, when people bend wires, if they want a round shape, they approximate the round shape by constantly micro-stepping and giving it little nudges. I don't think that's necessary based on things I've seen from industrial wire benders that I've seen online. It looks to me like you should be able to set the wire angle and then basically ramp the wire off of it. And since the wire is being bent at each point continuously, it just naturally spirals. At least that's what I've seen with thicker wire. We'll see what happens with my actual music wire, you know, whether or not it still functions like that. Hopefully it does. I'm hoping it does. If it doesn't, then we're back to micro stepping and nudging it into a pseudo round shape, which, you know, should in theory work. But that's where I'm at right now. I'm thinking that may be the next project. Otherwise, let's see. So I have the the custom CNC machine staring at me constantly. That really is just waiting for me to hook a printer motherboard up to it, and then we get moving with that again. That is largely just laziness, frankly speaking. Let's be real. At this point, my original excuse with that one was that I wanted to try to do the headless. Well, I was going to run it headless to begin with, but I noticed that nobody really has good documentation on how to do a 16x2 LCD. Just the LCD, just the 16x2, I meant to say, not the 16x4, which is typical. So I was thinking about looking into and figuring out how to do that, but at this point, because it's been sitting around so long, I really should just give up and toss the motherboard onto it, make it headless, hook it up to Octopi, and get done with it. So that's where we're at with it. And if not Octopi, then perhaps in Arduino or something like that to send the G-code over. Just do a G-code sender. So I probably should get that all finished out. And I guess the last thing I'll say is just, I've been bringing this up that we get back to gaming. I've had a lot going on, so I have not done gaming streams. Gaming streams really are something I should just be tossing in. Like, if I'm not doing anything else, like, just stream an hour, you know, and be done with it. I don't have a good excuse why I haven't been doing that. Yeah, I mean, I should be doing it, I'm not doing it. We'll get there, we'll get there. I'll get some gaming streams up, and that is it from me for today, I believe. I believe that is the end of our 20-minute outro. So, if you guys have been watching, thank you, and I hope you have a great and wonderful day, afternoon, or evening, wherever you're at in the world, and I will catch you next time.